Welcome back to Recap TV. In this video, I am going to explain the story of a thriller movie called The Girl Next Door. This movie was released back in the year 2007, and this movie is based on the murder case of a girl named Sylvia Likens, who was abused and murdered by her caretakers. So, with that being said, let's begin the story. The film begins and we are introduced to an elderly man named David. David seems to be a businessman, and he is seen leaving his office. David is seen walking on the sidewalk, and he sees an old homeless man pass by him. After walking some distance, he hears a loud noise behind him. He turns around and sees people gathered around a man. He goes to check what happened, and it turns out that a car had hit the old homeless man he had seen earlier. David immediately jumps to the old man's rescue, which actually saves the old man's life. After handing him over to the EMTs for further assistance, David heads back home and wonders. If given a chance, he would have gladly taken the old man's place because he has seen a lot of pain and suffering in his life. He then takes out an old painting which looks to have been drawn by a child and begins reminiscing about his past. We are about to see the events which led David to become so selfless and not fear death. The story now goes back to the summer of 1958 when David was just a kid. One day, little David was fishing in the nearby river, and just then he is interrupted by a beautiful girl who asks him, "What is he doing?" He replies, "I am catching crayfish. Do you want to see them?" The girl comes closer and introduces herself as Megan, or in short, Meg, as she likes to be called, and the two start talking. After speaking for a while, David notices a scar on Meg's arm, and out of curiosity, he eventually asks her about that. After hearing that question, Meg's expression turns a little bit sadder, and she reveals that her family had recently been in a very fatal car accident, in which both of her parents died, and it left her 10-year-old sister Susan crippled, and Meg had gotten this scar as a result. She also reveals that after the demise of her parents, she has come here to live with her Aunt Ruth Chandler. Upon hearing that, David tells Meg that in that case they are going to be neighbors. David was neighbors with the Chandler household, which consisted of a single mother, Ruth Chandler, and her three sons, Donnie, Willie, and Ralphie. David used to spend the most of his time in the Chandler's house, and since he was friends with Ruth's kids, she was generous enough to let him come and go at his will, and she didn't mind his presence at all. The next, we see David asking Ralphie about his sister Meg. Ralphie tells him that she is not his real sister, but rather like a stepsister, and there's a difference between a real sister and a stepsister. After this conversation, the two boys join the other kids of the neighborhood to play some games. These kids have blindfolded a girl, and she has to find them by throwing apples at them. The girl obviously loses the game, and as a punishment, Ruth's sons ask her some very vulgar and inappropriate questions. Next, we see David heading to the nearby carnival at night, where he runs into Meg again. The two kids then agree to ride the big Ferris wheel together, and Meg slightly opens up to David that night. She tells him that Ruth is very mean towards her and she dearly misses her mother. The next day, when David went to the Chandler's house, he saw Ruth telling her kids about the carnival she used to visit when she was a little girl. And there used to be this dance where the girls would hike up their skirts way up to their upper hips, and that dance used to be the favorite among men. As audience, we can see by now that Ruth is not a good and ideal mother, and she is a bad influence on her kids, as she has spoiled them at this very young age, giving them the freedom to cuss, smoke, drink, and even talks about vulgar topics with them. Next, we see Ruth getting ready to take the boys to the carnival, and she tells Meg to stay and guard the house behind them. The following night, after coming back from the carnival, the boys are now camping outside the house, and except for David, the rest of the boys have planned to peek on Meg while she's going to change. Now, despite David's protests, the other boys line up to peek on Meg while she changes. Sensing that someone is lurking outside, Meg turns off the room's light, ruining their plans. Next day, we see Ruth teaching the boys how to remove silkworm from the trees. She first removes them using a makeshift net, and then burns the silkworms alive. Upon seeing this cruel act of Ruth, Meg gets disgusted by this. Sensing her disgust, Ruth intentionally asks Meg to burn the silkworms herself. Meg obviously rejects this, and as a result, Ruth lashes out at her and directs her to join her sister Susan to do the dirty dishes. Next up, we see David ordering a burger for himself at a restaurant. Moments later, Meg appears behind him and asks him to order another burger for her. Surprisingly, she breaks down in front of David and reveals that Ruth hasn't fed her since 2 days. Meg reveals to David that Ruth hasn't let her eat anything because she says that Meg is getting chubbier day by day and she needs to diet. She also reveals to David that she had a hobby of drawing and she used to draw every day before the accident. But now she's not even able to draw because of Ruth being up her nose all the time. David reaches out to hold her hand, and while holding hands, he encourages her not to let Ruth get to her and tells her that she should start drawing again, and he would like to see one of her paintings. Meg visibly seems to be happy by the encouragement she receives from David. So next day, Meg visits David's house and hands him a painting she has made for him. David's mother happily invites Meg inside the house, but Meg, fearing Ruth, she politely declines and leaves. Later in the day, David gets an idea that he thinks would help out Meg. So that night, David goes to Ruth and gives her the painting which Meg gave to him, telling her that Meg had made this painting for her. The painting depicted visuals of a teenage boy catching fish by a river. This is the same painting we saw the older David take out earlier. Ruth quickly makes out the fact that this painting was not made for her, but for David. She refuses to take the painting and returns it back to David. Ruth goes to Meg and lashes out at her. She asks her what else has she given to David. Ruth begins to mutter in front of Meg that nowadays girls have become very spoiled and that they're giving anything to boys. She calls Meg a and says some very inappropriate things to her. She tells her that girls who act like need to be punished. Later that night, David watches from his window that Ruth is again lashing out at Meg and Susan. She's yelling and cursing at them again. The next day, when David visits the Chandler household, surprisingly, he walks in on Donnie, Willie, and Ralphie tickling Meg, having her cornered by the wall. The very next second, Ralphie reaches out for her chest and gropes one of her breasts. Now, instinctively, Meg pushes him away and slaps him hard in the face, and she leaves the room in shame and embarrassment. The boys go to Ruth and tell her that Meg had slapped Ralphie. Ruth comes up and spots Susan hiding in the closet. She pulls her out and starts to probe her. She asks Susan why didn't she stop Meg when she slapped Ralphie. Susan says that it was Ralphie's fault, and he got what he deserved. Ruth yells at Susan and tells her that it was her sister Meg's fault, and by not stopping her from slapping Ralphie, it has now become her fault as well, and she will be punished accordingly. Next, Ruth takes out a toilet brush and lies Susan down on the bed. She hikes up her frock and begins to back. Upon hearing her sister's cries, Meg comes to stop Ruth, but she's captured by her kids. Ruth stops and tells Meg that if she did something like this ever again, then she will again punish her sister Susan. Next day, when David and Ralphie were getting some ice cream, they spot Meg speaking to a police officer. Their conversation, however, wasn't audible from this distance. The very next moment, Ralphie goes ahead and informs Ruth about this incident. Ruth gets Meg and Susan to sit down with them, and then she lashes out at Meg. Her elder son, Willie, slaps Meg hard in the face and tells her, how dare she go to the cops. Ruth tells Meg that there's no one here who's going to help her now, and she has made a very big mistake by going to the cops. She tells Meg that now she will experience what true pain is. Next day, David overhears the boys planning on playing the same blindfold game with Meg. David protests against this and tells the boys not to do this. Later in the day, while having lunch, David asks permission from his parents to have a sleepover at the Chandlers. His dad gives him permission for the sleepover, and in the night, when David goes to the Chandlers' house, he finds everyone in the basement. And to his surprise, Meg has been tied up, gagged, and blindfolded. and she has been made to stand on top of books. David is taken aback by this sight, but he chooses to remain silent, fearing Ruth. Ruth tells Meg to confess about her sexual experiences. Meg, having not done anything ever, she remains silent. Upon getting no answer from her, Ruth tells Willie to remove all the books which were supporting her weight, which now causes a strain on Meg's arms as she struggles to stand still. Now, according to them, this was just a game where Meg had to answer their questions, irrespective of what they were. And failing to answer them, Ruth tells Willie to strip Meg naked, which he does, removing all her clothes one by one and fully exposing her to everyone. Ruth again asks Meg to confess. Meg tells her that she has got nothing to confess. Donnie then reaches out and tries to touch Meg's body, but Ruth stops him, telling him that there's no need to touch a filthy like her. Ruth tells Meg that if she doesn't start behaving from now, the next time, it will be her sister Susan in her place. Meg gets very scared and nods in agreement, and they all leave the basement, leaving Meg alone like this. Later in the night, David is unable to sleep and he cannot stop thinking about Meg. He talks the other boys into sneaking inside the basement and ease her bonds a little bit and maybe even give her something to drink as well. The other boys accept, although they have their own plans in mind. Willie offers Meg some water if she would let him touch her afterwards. Meg agrees, and Willie gives her water, but Meg soon backtracks on what she had promised earlier and tells Willie that if he or anyone else dare touch her, she would scream on top of her lungs and wake up Ruth, and they'll all get a beating then. The boys, fearing Ruth, they all quickly exit the basement and leave Meg alone. Next day, we see Ruth feeding Meg, but due to weakness, Meg was not even able to chew the food. So out of frustration, Ruth throws away the coffee cup and tells Meg that because of her, now her coffee cup is broken, and now her sister Susan will receive the punishment in her place. She then goes ahead and starts Susan again in front of everyone, and Meg has to watch. David is forced to watch this torment of the sisters, and he's not able to do anything to stop Ruth. He could only watch helplessly for now. Next day, David goes out to his dad's bar to give him a helping hand on his work. He asks his dad, "Is it okay to hit a girl?" His dad tells him to never ever hit a girl, as it is extremely inappropriate and ungentlemanly. However, if things were to get out of hand and he needs to defend himself, only then should he ever lay a hand on a girl, but never without proper reason. Next, David goes to the Chandler's house and meets Susan. He apologizes to her and tells her that he is helpless and he cannot stop their torment. He wants to help them, but he cannot seem to find any way to do so. He then sneaks down to the basement and takes a peek through the door, where he sees a bunch of the neighborhood kids beating up Meg while she's tied up. They're using her as a punching bag and throwing her all around. After they all leave the basement, David steps inside with the intention to untie Meg. However, he is caught by Ruth, who was standing just behind the wall all along. David quickly scours out of the basement upon seeing her. In the night, David goes to tell his mom about what's happening with Meg, but David's mom had already gone to bed by then, and he's not able to speak to her. Next day, when David goes to the Chandler's house, he finds everyone in the basement, and to his surprise, he sees something which he had never expected to see. Willie is cutting Meg in the belly, and Ruth burns the wound with a lit cigarette tip. It is then their doorbell rings, and Ruth sends her boys to get the door. David tells Ruth that she shouldn't have sent the boys to get the door. What if it's the cops? Ruth sees some reason in David's argument. She tells him that she's going upstairs, but if she hears any sound coming from the basement while she's upstairs, she'll kill them both, and she means it. David nods in agreement and Ruth goes upstairs, and it's indeed the cops. The officer, which Meg spoke to earlier, has come to check on the girls and see if they're doing okay. The officer comes inside the house and asks about Meg and Susan. Ruth tells him that the girls are doing well and they're just out shopping. The officer believes Ruth for now and leaves the house, but deep down, he was aware that something was fishy here. But for now, he decides to leave and keeps a close watch on the house. Meanwhile, down in the basement, David tells Meg that today, he will leave the back door unlocked so she could escape tonight. She must go to the cops and tell them everything. David tells her that he will take care of Susan for her, but she must escape tonight. He puts the blindfolds and gags back on Meg before the Chandler boys arrive. And soon enough, the boys come back to the basement and Willie asks David, how did he know that it's the cops? Did he snitch to the cops about them? David assures Willie that he did not tell anyone, and he just took a wild guess. The boys believe David and let him go. Later that day, David sneaks inside the Chandler house, and while they're all watching the television, he stealthily makes his way down the basement and gives Meg a small knife and some cash and tells her to escape tonight. Meg tells David to hide the cash under the big rock by the river where they had first met, and she would recover the cash from there once she's escaped. David agrees with this plan and he quickly slips out of the Chandler's house, leaving the door unlocked. And then he goes and hides the cash under the big rock as planned. And now he waits. David could not sleep that night in anticipation of whether Meg would be able to escape or not. By the first morning light, he quickly makes his way back to the river and goes to check the hidden cash. But it turns out the cash is still there, which can only mean one thing: Meg was not able to escape. He quickly goes back to the Chandlers and finds everyone in the basement, including the other neighborhood kids. And to his shock, he sees that Willie, Ruth's oldest son, is Meg, and the others are just watching along with Ruth, who seems to be enjoying Meg's pain. Ruth tells everyone that Meg had cut her bonds and tried to escape last night, and she's receiving her due punishment for this insubordinate behavior. And also, she suspects that someone had helped her in this act by slipping a knife and leaving the back door unlocked. And it's just a matter of time that they will find out who was in on it. Next, Ruth tells David, Meg. But David rejects her offer and tells her that what she's doing is extremely wrong, and she must stop now. Ruth laughs in his face and tells him menacingly that she will not be lectured by a child on what's right and what's wrong. Next, she tells the neighborhood punk Eddie Meg. Eddie tells Ruth that he's not interested, but he would like to cut her instead. Ruth likes this idea and uses a sharpened hot bobby pin to carve a sexually explicit message into Meg's abdomen. She observes that this will keep any man from wanting Meg, but she soon comes up with another plan. She makes out the fact that despite all this, it won't stop Meg from wanting a man. So she suggests that they circumcise her. David, who was patiently enduring everything so far, he now speaks up. This suggestion was too much for him and he tries to bolt out of the basement to inform the cops. But the Chandler boys capture and subdue him. They tie him up and make him witness the horrifying scene that was to unfold now. Ruth uses a propane torch to burn Meg's, who passes out from the pain and shock. And David is made to watch the entire thing. And soon he too passes out from the shock. When he wakes up, he finds himself tied up on the ground. He quickly frees himself and rushes to check on Meg and Susan. Meg is unconscious and she is in real bad shape. Susan asks David, does he hate her? Because he should. And Meg should too, because if not for her, she would have escaped last night. And none of this would have happened to either of them. It turns out that Meg had indeed tried escaping last night, but she tried to sneak out Susan from upstairs as well and got caught. David tells Susan that it's not her fault, and not Meg's either. It is Ruth who did this to her. David, fearing that Ruth is now going to kill them all, he comes up with a plan to escape. He fills up a metal pot with rags and sets it ablaze. The smoke rolls up the stairs and out under the edges of the house. When Ruth notices this and races through the basement's door to find out what's going on, David hits her over the head with Susan's crutch, knocking her down. He then proceeds to hit her multiple times in the head, seemingly killing her in the process. Upon seeing this, Willie knocks David to the ground and manages to beat him up pretty good. He pulls out a small knife and was about to knife David, but he is stopped by the police. As they had seen the smoke from outside, and rushed in to check on the basement. The Chandler boys are taken away by the officers, and the chief officer Jennings asks David, "How'd all this happen?" David tells everything to the officer, and upon seeing the bad state which Meg is in, the officer rushes out with Susan to call for EMS and tells David to stay with her until he comes back. David goes ahead and lies down beside Meg, who gains consciousness and speaks in a barely audible voice. She says, "I wish all of this was just a dream, a nightmare." David asks for her forgiveness for not acting sooner. Meg forgives him and tells him that she was glad he acted in the end. She asks David, will he take care of Susan for her? Because she thinks she's not going to make it herself. David tells Meg that he will take care of Susan and that she's also going to make it. She just has to hang on and stay strong. But Meg was too weak and in pretty bad shape to survive. She speaks in a barely audible voice, "I think I love you, David." And in the next couple of seconds, Meg succumbs to her injuries and passes away, leaving David crying as he holds her close. The story now comes back to the present time, as the adult David is lying next to the picture, saddened by reliving his memories. Next day, he goes by the river and lets go of all his guilt of not acting sooner. Imagining Meg by his side, he is thankful to her for teaching him that regardless of what you couldn't do, it is what you do last that counts. And with this, the story ends here. Do leave a like on the video if you are also tearful, like I am right now. Leave your thoughts on the comments, and I will attach the link to the real story of which this film is based on. Do check it out from the description. Thank you so much for watching through the end, and I wish you all a good day.